What is up, everybody? Happy Packers game day. Welcome into the Pack-A-Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can follow the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. Appreciate you being here. It is a massive day. Win or go home, do or die. Win and you're in, however you want to look at it. This is a pseudo playoff game, Packers-Lions. If the Packers win, they get into the official playoffs and hopefully can cause some havoc from there. This is going to be a very interesting game. We've heard all the chatter all week long. It has been a very interesting week in the NFL, and this will be the final game of the regular season right before we head into the NFL playoffs, and especially depending on what happens with Seattle. If somehow Seattle would fall in that game and it would become an actual, basically win and you're in game for both teams, that would make things very interesting as well. So it's going to be worth watching that Rams-Seahawks game very early in the day. I can't imagine the Seahawks dropping that game, but crazier things have happened, and then that will determine whether or not the Lions are actually playing for a playoff spot in this one or not. But either way, we've got a lot to go over. As always, I'm going to be going over my keys to the game. I'll give my final prediction. Before we get there, a couple small news and notes, just noteworthy items before we get in to everything else. Lions activated 2 players from their practice squad, cornerback Jaron Williams and running back Jamar Jefferson. Jefferson's interesting because they have a lot of running backs. Not sure what their plan is there. I think more noteworthy, no offensive lineman activated or anything like that, which would maybe give an indication that maybe Frank Ragnow wouldn't be able to go. So just a corner and a running back for the Lions. Meanwhile, no activations for the Green Bay Packers. So I'm not really expecting an activation here. The one maybe would have been if they wanted to activate, Amendola, their new kicker, whether it be for kickoffs or just some Crosby insurance, whatever it may be. They didn't, so Mason Crosby will be the one and only and primary kicker in this game, but no activations for the Packers. The only questionable going into the game was Josiah DeGuara. They have 3 tight ends on the roster, even if DeGuara is not able to go, in Tyler Davis, Robert Tonyan, and Mercedes Lewis. So they can get by without that if it does in fact come to fruition that DeGuara wouldn't be able to play. It did seem like he practiced on Friday, and hopefully he's able to go, but that's going to be the key questionable to keep an eye on when the inactives come out for Green Bay. Meanwhile, for the Lions, they had multiple players questionable, but Frank Ragnow, as mentioned all week, is going to be the key. I would be shocked if he didn't go. Now, maybe if they're eliminated from the playoffs and he's just really struggling, maybe he would just say, hey, there's no use pushing this, right? I think that's maybe one of the bigger ways that from a win-loss standpoint, or how all in are the Lions if they didn't have anything to play for, would they be? I think they're going to be all in no matter what. I think this game is going to be very emotional. I think the Lions would want to take out some frustrations, even if they weren't able to get into the playoffs. I certainly know they'd love to knock Green Bay out, even if they can't get into the playoffs. But the one concession that they might make if, again, they don't have anything to play for on Sunday Night Football would be, hey, maybe Frank Ragnow or some of our other guys that are questionable are just a little bit beat up, and why risk them in a game that no longer is advantageous for Detroit? So overall, I think watching Rams-Seahawks first, and then what type of inactives does that cause for the Lions when they no longer have anything to play for? I have no question in my mind, and I mean zero question, that this Dan Campbell-led feisty bunch of Detroit Lions are going to come to Green Bay and fight like hell, no matter what the situation and scenario is. But I do think maybe some of the inactives could change depending on what the scenario is and if they can actually get in the playoffs or not. 2 questions before I get into my keys that I'm going to be very interested in also as we start getting into pregame warmups and start seeing who some of the starters are. And just as we get into the game, I want to know who starts at right tackle. Is it Yosh Nijman? Is it Zach Tom? The good news is I don't think there's a bad decision here. If they line up with if I see either Yosh or Zach at right tackle to start the game, I literally have zero issue with either. I think both of them can be fantastic right tackles in this game. Would not give me cause for concern. Going into the week, I kind of led with the idea of Zach Tom. Mike Wall did kind of talk me into Yosh a little bit. I think he's just a little bit more stout at the point of attack, and I think that could play a little bit better in this game. I don't know that either of them are going to be much different in the run game. So overall, they're not all that different if we're being real, but Yosh has had more time at right tackle. I think he can anchor a little bit better. And I do think that Zach Tom, then you basically have a super sub, right? If your left tackle goes down, Zach Tom. If your left guard goes down, Zach Tom. If your center goes down, maybe Elton and then Zach Tom at left guard, or just Zach Tom. If your right guard goes down, Zach Tom. If your right tackle goes down, Zach Tom. If you're having insurance issues, Zach Tom. Like whatever the issue might be, Zach Tom can go in and solve your problem. So I do kind of like the Zach Tom super sub off the bench with everything else status quo along the start of the offensive line. The other question that I'm going to be really interested in is the secondary. So Keyshawn Nixon, not on the injury report. He should be good to go. We've seen Darnell Savage basically get his starting position back. Rudy Ford's been very active. Innis Gaines has started receiving playing time. So what does the base nickel dime starting defense look like? If I had to guess, I would say Jair and Douglas, obviously, in your corners and base, with, I would guess, Amos and Savage at safety. That's going to be my guess for base defense. In nickel, you could go Keyshawn in the slot and keep Savage at safety. You could put Savage in the slot and bring Rudy Ford in at safety. Those are probably your two options. I'm going to guess that they go with Savage in the slot and Rudy Ford at safety in the nickel. I think a little bit more physicality against this Lions team might be a good thing, and that's what I'm going to guess that they do. If they go Keyshawn in the slot with either Savage or Rudy Ford at safety, I'd be fine with that, but my guess would be Savage in the slot and Ford at safety. And then dime, right? Then who comes in dime? My guess would be then Keyshawn comes in, but again, they have a lot of interesting options there. It probably depends on the game scenario too. If they become very pass heavy, maybe you do go Keyshawn in the slot a little bit more. You could also argue like, hey, let's just have Keyshawn focus at returning. He's that good. Like, don't even let him bother on defense right now. You can get by without him. Maybe just let him be the star returner. There's logic in that too. So very interested to see how they play that secondary. How involved is Savage, Ford, Nixon, and Innis Gaines? How do they split reps between those four? We know Amos, we know Jair, and we know Razul are going to play every single snap on defense. And then it just comes down to who's the fourth, fifth, and sixth guy. So will be worth noting, and again, as will right tackle. So that gets us to our hopefully not last time of the season, our 10 keys of the game. We do it every single week. Let's start with number one. I want to know who handles the emotion and the pressure of this game better. Now, pressure is going to be different depending on if the Lions have something to play for or not. But obviously the Packers are going to have pressure no matter what. And I do think the Lions are going to go out and, like I said, play for everything no matter what. It's been a very tough week in the NFL with the entire Damar Hamlin situation. All right, so that's number one, is just how do both of those teams respond to that. This is going to be a playoff atmosphere. Even for this young Lions team, if they don't have a playoff game to play for, if they're eliminated prior to the game, it is still going to be Lambeau Field, Sunday Night Football, last game of the regular season, and the Packers have to win to get in. That will be a playoff atmosphere no matter what. Well, the Lions are going to have one of two things. They're either going to have pressure from trying to get into the playoffs and knowing that if they win, they're going to get in, or they're going to be pissed off and frustrated that they don't have a chance to get in, and they're going to try to take out their frustrations on the Packers. And then last but not least, we have seen a lot of trash talk, or at least some really interesting like signing of Packers jerseys by Lions players. If you don't know what I mean, check it out on Twitter. We've also had the players taking umbrage with Aaron Rodgers, which was seemingly like, I think you're trying a little bit too hard to, give yourself bulletin board material type of things. But either way, you could kind of tell through this week that the Lions feel they've got a little bit of little brother syndrome, right? The Packers have been the big brother to almost everyone in the NFC North, and the Lions have been the little brother to everyone in the NFC North for a very long time now. So the Lions have some little brother syndrome, and they want to go and they want to start punching their big brother and make it so that they can't get in the playoffs. And if they have the chance to get into the playoffs even more, right, they're going to be swinging even harder. So the entire emotions of this week, the playoff atmosphere, either frustration or pressure for the Lions, and all the trash talk, smack talk, and just the stuff that's gone on this week, I think this is going to be a very intense game, and who handles that emotion and who handles that pressure better is going to go a long way in deciding this game. Number two, very interested to see who's more physical. And this has been, we kind of talked about a little bit yesterday in like the mystique of Lambeau Field, but this is a January football game. It's not going to be super cold, but it's going to be a cooler January Lambeau Field game, playoff atmosphere. And a lot of times the team that wins in that situation is the one that's playing a more physical brand of football. That's not exactly been the Packers' MO for this season or through their January, playoff games, playoff type games in the past. So I want to see Green Bay come out and be the more physical team, or at least, go blow to blow with the Detroit Lions. If this becomes less about physicality and more of a, finesse passing game, well then, yeah, you feel pretty confident with that as well. So I want to see Green Bay come out, set the tone, be physical, hold up at the point of attack, win the line of scrimmage. That's something Green Bay can do. They can battle the elements and have that be at their favor, defend Lambeau Field. I think they're going to have a great chance in this game, but the team that's more physical, I think, is going to go, again, a long way in deciding the outcome of this one as well. Number 3 on my list, even though these aren't specifically ordered in order of importance, but number 3 on my list could be like the most important or number 1 on my list, and that's Joe Barry's defensive game plan. And to me, this has the potential to be a little bit of a disaster. And the reason I say that is during this winning streak, Joe Barry's not blitzed a lot. He's had a lot of 4-man rush, and he's used his secondary in unique ways in the back. They've rallied to the football. They've tackled better. They've been more communicative in coverage. They've done a lot of good things, and they've kind of, because they've been successful in the secondary, it's allowed some of their pass rush and pressure to get there, even though they're only bringing 4 guys. And some of the guys up front, like Jerron Reed, Kenny Clark, Preston Smith, JJ Enagbare, TJ Slayton, some of those guys have really stepped up big. And that's been a recipe for success for them. The issue is I really like this Lions offensive line, and I think they are going to give Green Bay's front 4 a lot of problems. And so much so that if Green Bay just keeps bringing 4 guys, I think they're going to struggle to get to Jared Goff. And the one thing you need to know about Jared Goff is that if he stays on his spot and plays in rhythm, he can be a very good quarterback, not all that dissimilar to Kirk Cousins from a week ago. If he's on his spot and can survey the field, he can pick you apart. If he's moving around at all or dropping his eyes to look at the rush, he is completely pedestrian and you can completely pick him apart. We're talking interceptions, fumbles, turnovers, etc. This is the toughest offensive line that they've gone against by far in this winning streak. And if the front 4 of Enagbare and Preston and Clark and Slayton, or whoever subs in, the Wyatts, the Hollands, all of it, right? If those guys cannot get home with 4, Goff's going to have the ability to pick apart this defensive backfield. These are good wide receivers that Detroit has, from Amon-Ra St. Brown to DJ Chark to Jamison Williams, like Reynolds. These are good players. And again, if Goff doesn't have to move and he has protection, he can pick you apart. He's a very good quarterback in that one scenario. So I really am hoping that Joe Barry has a plan where he's going to be able to either get home with those 4. And if you want to start the game by saying, hey, this plan's been working, we've won, we've gone on a 4-game win streak with this, can we do the same thing and have success? If you want to start with that, I'm okay with that. Let's see if your plan that's been working works first before you try reinventing the wheel and adjusting to a team that you don't even know if you need to adjust for yet. Like, let's see if what has been working works. Like, that's fine. But if all of a sudden that front 4 can't get home against Detroit's very good offensive line, you've got to start changing up some things. And how he does that is going to be incredibly important, because if Goff starts getting into a rhythm early and then, you bring pressure, but now there's guys open down the field, the defensive backs aren't communicating as well. Now you've got the chance for Jamison Williams and DJ Chark and Amon-Ra St. Brown to hit some of those explosive plays. So very, very interested to see how Green Bay's front 4 does against that defensive or that offensive line of the Lions. And then if it can't get home, then at that situation, what does Joe Barry do to counter, to try to get pressure on Goff, to try to make him uncomfortable, and can the secondary hold up on the back end? So this to me is a very, very intriguing matchup. And like I said, maybe the one that I'm going to be looking at most as I watch this game early. And then number 4 goes right kind of side by side with that. But we know Kenny Clark. We know Preston Smith. Enigbare's been solid on the edge. Those tackles going against, Sewell on the outside, those are not going to be easy matchups for Green Bay to win. And then Taylor Decker being the other one. But the other one that I want to, know is the interior of that defensive line. And what I mean by that is the other 3 are the guys not named Kenny Clark, basically, right? Devontae Wyatt, Jerron Reed, and TJ Slayton. We've seen all three of these players step up in some capacity over the last month or so. Jarran Reed probably saved the Packers season against the Dolphins. TJ Slayton was phenomenal last week against the Vikings. Devonte Wyatt hasn't had that standout game, but you see him coming on and playing better football and being a real contributor on this defensive line. Those three, the guys not named Kenny Clark, because Kenny Clark's going to get a lot of attention. Those edge rushers are going to have a really hard time with Decker and Sewell on the outside. Those are the guys that are going to have to win on the interior against the guards. And if Wyatt and Reed and Slayton can have really good games, both against the run and pressuring the pocket, collapsing the pocket, making Goff feel uncomfortable, it's going to benefit the Packers immensely. And that is going to be something that, again, has to happen because the edges are in really tough battles. Kenny's going to get doubled more often than not, and it's going to be up to those other guys. And sometimes you're not banking on Jarran Reed, TJ Slayton, Devonte Wyatt to go win you the game. But if your other three guys that are rushing are in really disadvantageous situations, then it's going to be up to that defensive lineman that's in there to try to win their battle and get some pressure. We've seen Reed do it. We've seen Slayton be disruptive. Devonte Wyatt has all the talent in the world. Those three guys are going to have to step up huge in this game. Number 5, and I kind of hinted at it at number 3, but this is again going to be a game where you have two offenses that have the ability to hit some explosive plays. If we want to talk about it in a Survivor Series WWE type matchup, we've got on one side DJ Chark, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, and DeAndre Swift. I know for a Survivor Series I'm missing one guy. It should be 5, but play along with me. So Chark, Amon-Ra, Jamison Williams, and DeAndre Swift. And on the other side for the Packers, you've got Keyshawn Nixon as a returner, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and Aaron Jones. You've got a lot of opportunity for explosive plays. And then you've got Aaron Rodgers that can be kind of a force multiplier and hit some explosives regardless of who the player is at times too, right? So the explosive plays in this game. Can your offense get in the end zone easily without having to go 12 plays, 85 yards in cold weather? Because if you can do that, your odds of winning go up immensely. And there are some really key playmakers in this game. I just named all of them. There's other guys that can get some explosives as well, but those 8 guys can take it the distance, can create big plays. And I'm going to be really interested to see which of those Survivor Series teams ends up creating the bigger explosive plays in this game. Number 6, talked about it in great detail yesterday, the mystique of Lambeau Field. It is time to defend Lambeau. That starts with the crowd. Can the crowd get energized? Can they get behind the Packers? Can the Packers, just like a week ago against the Vikings, can they give them stuff to cheer about early so they stay on their feet, stay engaged, give the opposing offense hell, and, not hopefully cause as much chaos when the Packers are on offense, not doing the wave, etc. But I think this is partly fans, this is partly the team, and just in general, can the emotion and the intensity and the spectacle and the aura of Lambeau Field give Green Bay that true home field advantage and help get them to the playoffs? Even though this won't be a playoffs where we'll see Lambeau Field again, can it help them in their kind of one pseudo playoff game, get them onto the playoffs and hopefully onto success from there? Number 7 is one I have talked about all week long. I've given you the statistics. The Packers against the Lions last time had 5 opportunities inside the 23-yard line with either 1st and 10 or 1st and goal, and it resulted in a total of 3 points. The Green Bay's red zone offense has been atrocious at times, really bad at others, like whatever adjective that you want to use, it hasn't been good enough. They've got to find ways to get into the end zone. This isn't your old-time Detroit Lions who are going to put up 13 points in this game. This Lions team is going to put up points. They are good enough. They are balanced. They will run the football. They will run trick plays. They will throw deep. They will throw intermediate. Amon-Ra is a problem. This is going to be a Lions offense that puts up points. You can't settle for field goals, or worse, get stuffed in red zone, 4th and goals, throw picks, have fumbles, etc. Red zone scoring for both teams is going to be important. If we just talked about the Lions, right? Maybe when I said they're going to put up points, the same thing goes for red zone defense. Maybe the Lions hit some of those explosives. Maybe they put together some drives, but can you hold them to field goals? For the Packers, can you get touchdowns? Red zone is always going to be important, but it was literally the deciding factor in the game the last time these two teams played. So Green Bay has to be better. They haven't really been better since they played last time, and this is going to be their final test, is can they be a much better team in the red zone and punch it in when they need touchdowns and not settling for field goals. Number 8, Last week, we saw Jair Alexander versus Justin Jefferson. This week, I would like to see more Jair Alexander matched up with the opposing team's number one wide receiver, this time being Amon-Ra St. Brown. I do think Detroit has weapons all over the field that they can use. So if they want to move Jair around a little bit more or have him stay in one spot, I don't hate it as much. But what I do want to see is on some key third downs. Key third downs, who do you want to go to in that situation? You know they're going to want to go to Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's where you can deploy a lot of the same things that you did against Justin Jefferson. This week, you use it against Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't care if he's in the slot, out wide right, out wide left. Figure out the rest of your defense. Make it challenging for Amon-Ra St. Brown, and don't let him get the easy completions on third down. Like I said, first, second down, maybe not so big plays. I'm okay with Jair being wherever he wants to be, and hopefully the other guys hold up. But big plays, or if Amon-Ra starts gaining momentum in this game, right? But if at halftime you're talking like he's got 6 catches for 75 yards or something, all right, it's time to make a change, and Jair needs to make sure he's shut down and not giving them the best opportunity to win the game. Number 9, run left, bootleg right. I don't think Detroit can hold up with the left side of the Packers offensive line. I think we need to remember, and it's time to just say, Bakhtiari and Jenkins are back. They are both playing phenomenal football. Run left behind Bakhtiari and Jenkins. Put Mercedes Lewis on that side. The Lions just don't have the guys that are going to be able to hold up against Lewis and Bakhtiari and Elton Jenkins. And as soon as they start committing more guys, bootleg right, and hope to hit some, whether it's an explosive play or whether it's just, dump off to the tight end of the flat and they can take it up. Well, we saw Tunyon get 18 yards on that play last week, whatever it may be. I wouldn't hate if they lined up to run left in the first play, Jenkins left guard, Bakhtiari left tackle, Mercedes Lewis, and then Allen Lazard on the left side, or Watson, your big time blocking players, and everything's looking like you run left, and then you bootleg right. So you immediately bootleg right just to give them hey, we're gonna do this all game, and then pound the ball left side the rest of the game. Trust Bakhtiari, trust Elton Jenkins, trust Mercedes Lewis. Detroit doesn't have the defensive linemen on either side. Or specifically to match up with those Packers offensive linemen and Mercedes Lewis. You can run left. Do it early. Do it often. Don't hesitate to go to it in key situations. Trust Jenkins. Trust Bakhtiari. Trust Lewis. Those are your 3 best players on offense, arguably. Aaron Jones, Aaron Rodgers, certainly in the conversation, but you can argue over the last, since Bakhtiari's gotten back, you could argue he's been their best offensive player in the games that he's been in. Elton Jenkins, over the last since he moved back to left guard, you can argue he's easily in the conversation as well. And Mercedes Lewis has been arguably their best blocker all year long. Run behind those guys, feel confident with it, and then bootleg right off of it. You should be able to run left without much resistance. You should be able to bootleg right to throw them off balance and hopefully hit some explosive plays down the field. Number 10, it's time. It is time. Aaron Rodgers is due for a 300-yard game. And I'm not just talking about any 300-yard game. I'm talking about doing the belt, doing whatever he needs to do, running touchdowns, passing touchdowns. I'm talking not just MVP Aaron Rodgers. I'm talking about we haven't seen assassin Aaron Rodgers in a hot second. He knows what's at stake. Playoffs on the line. Win against the Detroit Lions at home, Lambeau Field, in what, let's just say it, maybe not likely, but certainly possible, could be his last game ever at Lambeau Field. Like I said, I don't expect it, but it's certainly within the realm of possibility. We haven't seen that epic Aaron Rodgers moment this year. We've seen some fun moments. We've seen some gorgeous throws. We've seen some throws only he can make. We've seen last week the pump fake and then run into the end zone, do the belt. We've gotten some Aaron Rodgers moments. We haven't had that signature game. It is time for the Aaron Rodgers signature game. I think he's going to ball out in this one. I really, really do. And I think he's going to be the difference. So number 10, my key there is Aaron Rodgers. So just to recap, number 1, who handles the emotion and the pressure of this game. Number 2, who's more physical. Number 3, the defensive game plan from Joe Barry. 4, Wyatt, Reed, and Slayton inside. 5, who gets more explosive plays. 6, the mystique of Lambeau Field, home field advantage, whatever you want to call it. 7 is red zone offense, red zone defense for both teams. 8, Jair Alexander versus Amon-Ra St. Brown. 9, run left, bootleg right. And 10, that signature Aaron Rodgers game. I'm going Packers 31, Lions 27. I think we'll see some fireworks. I think we'll see some explosives. I think this is going to be a very fun game. I do believe it's a legitimate coin flip. I think even if the Lions don't have anything to play for, I think they're going to fight like hell in this game. The Fighting Dan Campbells, you don't want to mess with them at any time. They'll fight you no matter when, no matter why, no matter what the situation is. They will fight you tooth and nail. Green Bay's probably going to have more to play for, and I think that gives them a little bit of edge. And I like Green Bay just a little bit more in this game. So 31-27 Packers. Last but not least, I mentioned it when I talked about Aaron Rodgers. Whether it's Rodgers, whether it's Mason Crosby, Aaron Jones, Preston Smith, Adrian Amos, Alan Lazard, you guys know the names. David Bakhtiari, there's others as well. You know the names, you know the players. Whoever it is, maybe every one of those guys I just named will be back. Mercedes Lewis, some of them will probably not be. And no matter what, there's probably Randall Cobb. Like, some of those guys are playing their last home game as a Green Bay Packer. It just is what it is. There's no playoff games for Green Bay that will be held at Lambeau Field. Every game will be on the road no matter what. So win or lose this game, this is the last game of this season at Lambeau Field. And a good chunk, maybe not a good chunk, but there are going to be some very serious Packers that you've known and loved and cared about and cheered for and poured your heart and soul into and own their jerseys that are no longer going to be playing for the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field. This is the last time. I don't say that as to be a downer. I don't say that to be depressing. I don't think they've played their last games as Green Bay Packers. Like I said, I think this team is going to win and move on to the playoffs, but they're probably playing their last games at Lambeau Field, some of them. So just take a moment. That's all I say. I say it every year in the last home game or potentially last game of the season. Take a moment, enjoy those players, and just reminisce on, the joy they've brought you as a member of the team, and enjoy that last game. And hopefully guys like Rodgers and Cobb and Lewis and all Bakhtiari and everyone else, again, maybe they're all back. Maybe some of them are gone. Only time will tell. But hopefully they all go out and just absolutely ball out in their last game at Lambeau Field. That is going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. Enjoy the heck out of this game. It is a pseudo playoff game at Lambeau Field, Sunday Night Football. Should be an absolute blast. I will be right back here tomorrow to break everything down, good, bad, ugly, and different, whatever may come of it, whatever went right, whatever went wrong, whether win or lose, we will cover it all. So make sure to subscribe if you have not already. Check out the podcast every single day, 365 days a year. Comment below, like. I will see you guys tomorrow, but until next time, and as always, and especially today in a must-win game, go Pack Go.